Hey guys, Jeff at Hubie's Garage, and actually we're back at Howie's Garage today. Figured after the drive that we did with Howie on Father's Day, we took care of all the items that we had on the original repair list from 2 videos ago, and there were some items that we found on the drive 2 cities away where we went to pick up Howie and take him for a drive. And I figured let's just go ahead and stay on it so that we could get everything done on this car. We've got a speedometer that doesn't work. We're going to fix that today. We've got a left tail light that either has a bad ground or actually is out. So I've got some 1157 bulbs. We'll give those a try. And then we also have to get some of the 3M black weather adhesive and take care of the trunk seal that's hanging down. So let's get at it. All right, so we're going to need to take the speedometer out of the dash. So we'll go ahead and start with that. Basically, you've got a screw that, let me show you. On the 55's, they've got an outer plate here that covers up the linkage for the shift indicator. And you've also got a cover that covers the bottom of the steering wheel. Most of these, if I remember right, they were a slotted screwdriver, but this one may be a little different. So let's see if we can get the camera situated right here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and take that one screw out of the bottom here. So that'll free up. Okay, so there's the cover right there that we take that off. And then this is basically just got a press pin in here or some tongs that hold that in. You can see those on the back. So now we've got access to the screws. The Speedo for the 55's and 56's have a total of 4 screws. They've got 2 up here on the under the bonnet here, and then you've got 2 at the base. So we'll go ahead and take those out. They're typically Phillips head screwdrivers. So there's our first one. Here goes the, whoops, a little bit of an angle here because of the column being in the way. And there's the second one. See if we can get that out of here without dropping it. All right, and then we'll get these under the gauge face here. I know Howie, when he put this together, I've been finding a theme on this car is that he's not used matching hardware in many cases. You could see here, this is a Tri-5 screw with the chromed head, but you could see one screw is, I don't know how well you could see it, but one screw is shorter than the other, and that's typically not how you want to do it. You definitely don't want to use a long screw, because if you do, it'll go into the dash and dent the dash. So, okay, so this should slide out. And, you know, one thing that's interesting about this car, I'll go ahead and show you right now. This car was originally a V8 automatic. It was a 265 Power Glide car, so you could see it actually has a shift indicator on it. But one of the things that my dad did when he bought this car in '63 was he put a Muncie 4-speed in it. I'm not sure if it got a Muncie in that year, or if it got a Saginaw, or what they exactly had back then, but he basically hooked up a 4-speed to the 265, and then later on he did a swap, an engine swap, where he swapped he bought a 57 Bel Air 2-door hardtop that was I can't remember the name. It was almost like a Neptune green with a white roof, whatever they had for 57. I can't remember that color, but he bought a 57 hardtop that had a 283 Corvette engine in it, and he probably paid like $300-400 for the car, and he brought it in our backyard and rolled the 57 under our A-frame, used our come along. Actually, we had a chain hoist, and he went ahead and took that 283 out, set it on the ground, then rolled the 55 under the A-frame, took the 265 out of the 55 hardtop here, and then he put the 283 Corvette motor in the 55. And he did that in about 71, because I remember looking out the back window and watching him do that. And it was a pretty cool deal. So he ended up putting the 265 back in the 57, and he turned around and sold the 57 for exactly what he paid for it. So basically he got a free 283 Corvette engine that we had in the 55. The only problem is my dad used to go through the gears in this car quite a bit, and I remember he had a ritual where he'd come home in the last street just before the turnoff onto our residential street. He'd go through the gears in the car, and he was going through the gears pretty hard and heavy, running it up to redline, and I think he got it into 4th gear and then went to shut it off. But just before he went to shut it off, he heard like a glunk, 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 really bad death sound coming from the bottom end of the engine. And he managed to coast it all the way down the street and up into the driveway. Took the engine apart the next day and found the crankshaft in 2 pieces. So that was that for the 283. And that was about 73, 74. And then later on in 76 around, we ended up finding the L79 327 Corvette engine that we bought from a guy in Orange. He had it in his El Camino. And we got that engine, put that in the car, and got it running. And then the car sat for almost 30 years. So, and I got to the point where I got tired of looking at that engine sitting in this car, because it was a shell at the time. And for my Bel Air 2-door sedan, I was 16 and driving again, and I just had a 283 2-barrel with a power glide in my Bel Air sedan. So I decided when my dad was at work one day, hey, you know what, let's just take this really nice 600 Holley double pumper and put it on my 59 283, my 180 horse 2-barrel 59 283. And so obviously when I wanted to switch out the carburetor on that, I needed a manifold. So it's like, okay, well, let's take the manifold, the Edelbrock Torquer, and the 600 double pumper off of the L79 that's in my dad's hardtop, put it on my car. And then I started looking at it, and it's like, well, wait a minute, I can't have a really nice 4-barrel carburetor without some good flowing heads. So I decided to take the 461 camel hump heads, and I was going to take those off of the 327 and put those on my car. And then at that point it was like, well, all that work, having to buy head gaskets, you know, I'm just going to go ahead and take the whole engine. So we went ahead and took the whole L79 and put it in my car. And I'd started at 7 o'clock in the morning. My buddies were over. My dad knew that was abnormal for a teenager to be out of bed that early working on his car. So he called at his normal 7 o'clock at night when he called from the fire station to see how the family was and how we did, you know, what we were up to during the day. And I went over to that phone over there and picked up the phone, because my mom said, your dad's on the phone. And picked up the phone, and he says, hey, your mom says you and your buddies have been out in the garage all day working on your car. What are you doing? And I said, well, you know that 327 that was in your car? I said, yeah, it's in mine now. And then he hung up on me. So he didn't speak to me for 3 days. And then on the 3rd day, he finally comes up to me and looks at me, and he says, take me for a ride. So we went for a drive, went on a usual 4-lane road that's pretty uninhabited. And basically I had the same dashboard as this one. And you can see that the shift indicator is a little bit different than the later cars. So I had the car in low gear because I had a cast iron power glide that I had that L79 hooked up to. And I put it in low gear and went to shift into drive. Basically power glides, we used to call them power slides. And it slid into drive. He looked at me and he says, we got to get you a transmission. So the next weekend we were out putting a Turbo 400. We actually bought a switch pitch Turbo 400. It was a variable speed torque converter. And we put that in the car. And yeah, that was the story of how my 55 ended up getting Howie's engine. And then the hardtop here sat for another 15 years. And then when Howie retired from the fire department, he finally came out in the garage on his first day of retirement and tore everything apart, took the body off the frame, and that started the frame off restoration. So anyway, let's go ahead and get the Speedo out. We'll get the Speedo fixed. And yeah, nice sidebar story, but you know, stories like that, they're good ones. So Okay, so we got the screws out, and we'll go ahead and slide this thing out. And you know, the one thing that I do like to do is I like to take pictures of the wiring. And you know, this one may not want to come out real well. In fact, it's probably going to be easier at this point for me to go underneath and disconnect the speedometer cable by hand from the back. So let me get under there and do that. I'll avoid the cussing here, turn this off, and get back to you when the cable is disconnected. All right, well, that wasn't bad at all. I think just 1 or 2 cuss words. So anyway, we've got the Speedo cable. Whoops. Looks like the cable decided to come out, but not the casing. So we've got all the wiring here that's there. And, you know, I like to get some of the blue masking tape and label everything. You know, we've got the left blinker, right blinker, got the high beam, gosh, it's been so long. We've got the high beam in the center, which is the illuminated bow tie, and then you've got the 3 running lights that illuminate the cluster. So we're going to go ahead and label these, and you know, you could take a picture, you could label them, you know, whatever works best for you. You know, hopefully you could read your own writing when you come back a month later, or hopefully it's not a month later, but hopefully it's a day later and you can remember what you wrote. And but we're going to go ahead and do that too, just to make sure. Some of it's pretty self-explanatory because, you know, the gray wires here are basically the running lights. So, and the blinkers, well, you know, we've got a blue one and a light blue one, and I believe the high beam is green. So I don't really want to have to worry about not getting that right. Most of them are pre-formed into place so that when you put the harness back up into place, they almost go right back to the spot where they came from. So that's another possibility also, but we're going to go ahead and label them just to make sure. I don't want to have to try to troubleshoot this and take it apart again because I didn't get a wire right. So I'll go ahead and do that. So I got everything labeled. I didn't have any blue tape. I just had some white duct tape, and I went ahead and stuck it on our drip cloth so that it would kind of take some of the stickiness away from it. But everything is detached, and well, except this one running light right here, but I went ahead and labeled that all the gray ones were the running lights. And I got the fuel gauge disconnected. That's the big one that's the most important, because there's 2 studs here for the fuel gauge. And you know, I don't know if one is a positive or a negative, or how that works out, or if it just has to have the 2 wires on the one prong and then on the other, as long as they're connected and on opposing sides, or if it's, I'll have to look at that when we get this thing on the workbench. We'll see what they say. But anyway, so let's go ahead and lift this thing out. And we've got all the wires there that are labeled, and there's our Speedo. So I guess we could look at it while we're, well, you know what, it's not, it does say, it's hard to see it, but one says sender and then one says on. So one of them is the wire back to the actual sending unit, and then the other one is actually the power. So we'll have to make sure that those are correct. But this is the culprit right here. We're going to go ahead and take this Speedo head out, and then we're going to go ahead and get that cleaned up and get all the gunk out of it, and hopefully we can get this thing working again. So, all right, guys, well, we got the speedometer out of Howie's hardtop, and we brought it back over to my garage. We're going to go ahead and go through it, and I just have another Speedo that's from the Delray. It was one that I bought for the Delray, and I just brought it out just to kind of have it as a reference, and then also to show you the difference between the 2 speedometers that they do, at least for 55. I'm pretty sure 56s are very similar in the same way, but yeah. What we have here is we got the one from Howie's hardtop, and you can see that it has the shift indicator from the original Power Glide. The shift indicator, also known as the...
You know what these are? P-R-N-D-L.
Oh yes, that's a Fernando. My husband has a Fernando on his car too.
Yes. Every car should have a Fernando.
Yeah, so this is a little different from the later model ones because most of them had reverse in between the park and the neutral, and then instead of having the reverse down here where it was low, it just had drive and low. So this was the earlier cast iron Power Glide, and that was the way it was set up. Never a good idea to put reverse next to low, because I know many times when I was in my Bel Air two-door sedan as a kid and running the car in low gear, the car would go about 60 miles an hour in low gear, and you had two choices to put it into drive from that point. And trust me, there were more than once where I accidentally put it in reverse at 60 miles an hour. Luckily, the transmission was so whipped that it didn't do anything. It just basically made a zzz sound, and the car, it was like somebody applied the brakes, but rear wheels didn't lock up or anything like that. And when I realized I had done it, I immediately bumped it back into low and then back into drive. So anyway, here's the other setup for the 55. So if you had an original 55 or a 56, you would see that the shift indicator is not there. This is basically for a 3-speed or a 3 on the tree type column. So if your car, you know, that has the original speedometer, and you can see that there's no shift indicator lens right here, then it's a pretty good idea that the car might have originally been a 3-speed car. Now, Howie's hardtop was a 265 Power Glide car, and when Howie put the 4-speed in it, he just left everything the same, including leaving the shift indicator lens still in the Speedo. So anyway, let's go ahead and crack this one open. We'll get the speedometer head out, and you can see it's basically 2 screws. Actually, I'm going to switch over to the other camera because the GoPro doesn't do well on close-ups. Stand by. Okay, so just went ahead and switched over cameras, and basically to start, we're going to go ahead and take the outer screws out. There's a total of 5 of them, and that basically will take the speedometer needle as well as the Speedo head out of the car, and then we'll go ahead and, or out of the housing, and then we'll go ahead and separate the 2 screws to get the Speedo housing apart, because we want to get to this little brass plug that's right there on the side. So, all right, I'll get back to you. So I got the 5 screws out for the speedometer needle housing. Let's go ahead and lift this thing out. Basically, it just has some alignment pins on each side, so we'll go ahead and work around that. We'll go ahead and lift this out. Be delicate with all this, because this is, it's got to basically be tilted and then bring it back. It's got to be tilted and then bring it back towards you, and then there we go. So there's our speedometer, and we'll go ahead and disconnect these, or take off these 2 screws right here, so that we could get this thing apart and separated from this silver housing. So we're going to go ahead and set this thing down. You can see the speedometer needle is actually below the level of the black background housing. So we'll go ahead and set this on a rag and be real ginger with it, and then we're going to go ahead and separate the 2 screws here. So I got the screws backed out, and we'll go ahead and take the housing, separate the housing from the speedometer assembly itself. And yeah, you'll notice that the screws have some rubber gaskets, as well as there's a rubber gasket that's behind the housing, and you want to keep that in there because you want to try to keep this speedometer assembly as basically insulated as possible. So it's just part of the way that they had it set up at the factory. And then of course you have the tube here for your dash lights, so that'll stay with the metal housing. And good time to replace the lenses. I know that Dan Chuck, as well as actually I should say it was a Dan Chuck kit, but they do have it at Classic Industries, where they do have the new lenses, they do have the new tubes, and you could also get new lenses for the speedometer housing itself as well as the shift indicator. And I believe I've got that one for this when I go ahead and put this one together and restore it. Hopefully the chrome on this one will clean up and I won't have to take it to a chrome shop, because chrome these days is an arm and a leg. So, okay, let's go ahead and start into getting access to the interior portion of the speedometer, where the speedometer head is, because this is really tight right here, and I know this is gummed up, and we're going to get in there and clean that out really good. All right, so to get this little, basically like a little small brass freeze plug, it's kind of hard to see. I'll get it with the other camera, but you basically want to work this freeze plug back and forth and work it out of the hole, and then under that will be a little piece of felt, which is basically like an oil retainer that will keep the shaft of this brass head that's got a square insert in the center, and that's where the speedometer cable hooks to. And what ends up happening with these things is they get really gummed up over the years. Everything inside there, as far as lubrication and material, solidifies, and it gets to the point where it really starts to bind up. You know, I don't know if somebody over the years used graphite, and then maybe somebody came back and used some oil, and you know, the graphite and the oil mixing together gummed it up. Who knows? You know, I know this particular car, my dad's had it since '63. I haven't really talked to him as far as what he's done with this speedometer over the years as far as keeping it oiled, but alls I know is that when we put in that new speedometer cable, like you saw in the previous video, that this thing started squealing real bad, and this, basically this speedometer head right here, where this brass receptor is for the speedometer cable, is not happy. So we're going to get this cap open and get it cleaned out. Some of the tools that you might want to choose for that is, you know, your typical Harbor Freight O-ring gasket pick, whatever. I've got the curved one, I've got the 90-degree one, and I've got a straight one, and I also I also have an actual dental pick. So previous girlfriend who was a dental hygienist, and yeah, managed to get a couple of dental picks, and boy, these things are sure handy to have, so for the real intricate stuff just like this. So we'll go ahead and get this cap open and see what we can do. Let's see if I can rock it back and forth with the 90-degree angle one. I don't really have the ability to use the other camera as a close-up, so actually this one's not wanting to grab, so let's just go right to this dental pick and see if I can rock this back and forth, because I mean this thing may have been in here for almost 70 years, and you know, eventually they work their way out, but see if I can do it without putting, let me see if I can get a tiny screwdriver, tiny flathead screwdriver. There's one that actually fits in between. And this one, it looks like it's moving around, but just trying to get this out can be a little bit of a challenge. Yeah, that's not one to. Okay, there it goes, and I just popped it out, and it just came out. So, all right, that's a real, I don't know even if how well you could tell, but let's get the other camera here. So I got the brass plug out. Like I say, it's just like a little miniature freeze plug, like you'd put in the side of an engine block, but way smaller. And then down inside there you could see don't know if I can get a good light in there, but it's hard to see, but there's basically like a felt wiper that's in there, and we'll go ahead and peel that out. But even on the back of the freeze plug, there is some grease, and there's quite a bit of grit in it. It almost looks like a valve lapping compound on the back of this. So this is a real good indicator that we're going to want to get in there and try to clean out as much of that crap as possible, because it's probably pushing up against the shaft inside of here and causing it to bind. And you know, we don't want to just throw some lightweight 10-weight oil in this thing and put it back together, because if it sits, you know, you'll be right back to taking this thing apart, cracking the speedometer open, and redoing it again. So we're going to get in there and clean it out real good with some brake cleaner, and then we'll put some fresh oil in it and put it back in, and it should be good, hopefully, for another 70 more years. All right, so I went ahead and, yeah, it was a lot of effort, but I got that felt out, and yeah, that's what the felt looks like. This was wadded up and completely just solidified. It was basically wasn't even felt anymore. It's like big globs of grease, and I ended up doing quite a number on it with the dental pick, but yeah, eventually got it out. Who knows how much extra debris is down inside the unit with the shaft, so we'll go ahead and blow that out, and then we're probably going to have to pressure zap it with the brake cleaner as much as possible, because again, the brass end doesn't move real super well, so it might be that there's some more of this gunk, whatever's left over, this petrified felt that was supposed to be in there, and what of the pieces that might still be down inside that shaft, which you could see right there. So just for grins and giggles, I decided to take the other one apart and just see if this one was any easier. Surprisingly, this one seemed like it was in a little bit of a better condition. I'm guessing that Howie probably tried to fix this one and maybe gave up on it after you know, finding out what the situation was with this. Who knows? But this is the felt of what came out of the other one, and this is what it's supposed to look like. It actually looks like a piece of felt. So I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put this one back in Howie's, and then I'll try to find another one later on that will put in this one when I end up rebuilding this whole entire speedometer later on for the Del Rey. But in the meantime, let's go ahead, get some compressed air, and get some of the brake parts cleaner, and we'll go ahead and give it a couple gooses in that hole and see if we can get some of this debris out. So stand by. Okay, a little bit of a good sign here is when I had the red tube down in the hole of the speedometer, I had brake fluid that was spraying out on the end of where the brass end is. So yeah, let's keep at it and see if it gets any better. See if I can do this in a way where you could see it. Go ahead and turn the speedometer head here. It actually is spinning pretty easy now. So, not sure how well you can see this, but yeah, I'm just barely able to turn it with my ring finger, which is just minimal effort. Now it's spinning a lot. So I got all the grease off the end, and back of the Speedo head a lot more cleaned up. You see the brake cleaner coming out of the brass end right there. So okay, we'll go ahead and get it over the air compressor, and hey, perfect timing. We'll see if we can get this thing blown out. Got everything all cleaned out. I got it blown out. It's nice using the brake parts cleaner because it's got the toluene and it ends up drying rather nicely in it. But from what it was before, where it was really hard to turn, you can see now it's real nice. It's it almost freewheels now. So big difference using the brake parts cleaner to get all that gunk out of there. And now we're going to go ahead and start fresh with some old school 3-in-1 oil. Now, this is, you know, now that I think about it, this probably 3-in-1 oil is a real old school oil, and shoot, even a school kid knows what 3-in-1 is.
Bobby, what is 2-in-1?
You call it.
No, not 2-in-1.
What is 3-in-1?
Oil.
Well, in regards to this specific 3-in-1 oil, the one thing I'm a little bit concerned about is that this is a silicone based. So this is typically, and it even says on the bottom, it says quick drying. Now, I did go out and try to find some more 3-in-1, and my typical AutoZone, as well as some of the couple of the hardware stores, did not have it. So I ended up getting the equivalent to it from Liquid Wrench. Basically what it is it's like a 10-weight oil, and a petroleum-based machine oil. And that's exactly what this Liquid Wrench is. So it's the first time I'm not going to use 3-in-1. I definitely don't want to use the silicone-based 3-in-1 because that dries up, and it's supposed to leave a film, but you know, I just want to have some 10-weight oil in there that's going to stay in there, and that's going to be sealed up with that brass plug, and hopefully it'll last a lot longer so that I don't end up having to take the speedometer apart and doing it all over again prematurely. So let's go ahead and put some oil in there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and put some oil down in the hole, and this just has a real small little pinhole. Whoops, might have overfilled that a bit, but let me get a rag here. So yeah, it's basically filled up that reservoir, and work it in a little bit. Yeah, that is just really working nice there now. So okay, now we'll go ahead and take the felt and that we took out of the other speedometer. We'll go ahead and get that soaked so that it has some oil in it for the next few years that it's riding inside of there. We'll go ahead and push that back down inside there with, with the gasket pick. Push that down inside there, and we got to wipe off the excess oil again, and then we'll go ahead and put that little brass freeze plug back in there. And when I pulled this thing out, it was actually below the surface, so I want to make sure that it's rides below the surface, and right now it's above the surface. So we'll just go ahead and get this small screwdriver, and we'll kind of work it down in there to make sure that it's back where it needs to be. And kind of go around a circle here and work it in so that it stays sealed in and that we don't lose any of that oil, because this is on the driver's side, and it's actually at the 9 o'clock position. So we just want to make sure that the oil stays in this thing, hopefully for the next 30 some odd years, whatever. But yeah, okay, so we've got the brass freeze plug back in. Let me use the other camera to get a close-up of it. So you can see the freeze plug is back inside the speedometer head. Everything is lubed, the felt is inside there, and yeah, we're ready to go ahead and reassemble the speedometer. Alright guys, got it all back together. It's all done. Everything's snugged down, and everything fits into place on the speedometer. Now I have to get some more parts. I do have parts to restore this speedometer, and I think I'll probably do that at a later video where I'll go through and do everything as far as the speedometer goes. Take it apart, put new lenses in it, the new speedometer inserts, which include the tubes and the generator oil lenses, and yeah, so then we'll grease everything up and get the new felt for this one. But I'll do that at a later video. I'm not sure when. It might be sometime, but that one will do that. And then this one here, as far as I'm concerned, it's done. I'm sure it's going to work fine. I am going to end the video here because of the fact that I still have a few more things to do to Howie's hardtop. And when we go over to put this back into Howie's hardtop, we're going to take care of some of the other items that are on the list. And one of those items, I've got to figure out where the tachometer is. I've got an old original Sun tachometer that actually came out of the gasser, and we had put it in Howie's hardtop, but it didn't work without the sending unit. Sending unit wasn't, you know, it had a dead battery in it, and we've got some different use. I've got a different use for that Speedo now, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Howie had a Moon tachometer that looked like a Sun tachometer, but we'll go ahead and see if we can locate the Sun tachometer. We'll put the speedometer back into the hardtop. We'll take care of the left taillight and take care of the trunk weather stripping, and yeah, we'll definitely put this stuff here to use. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and yeah, we'll go ahead and get the parts back into Howie's hardtop and do that second push to get the last bit of the items on the list for Howie's hardtop finished. And yeah, we'll go out and take it for another test drive on the next video, or I should say on a future video. So anyway, thanks guys for watching. I appreciate all your support, all the comments, and yeah, if you guys are one of the 90% that are just passing by and you've made it this far, please just take the effort to hit the subscribe button. If you want to see other future videos that I put out there, like these tech tips for the Tri-5s, you know, you'll get notified if you ring the bell. So thanks guys, please subscribe and leave a comment, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Take care guys.